How's it going today? My name is Wes Wilson. I'm moderating a fantastic panel on shoutcasting and streaming in esports. I'm here with some fabulous guests. I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Yeah, my name is John Finch. I go by Finch. I'm a caster for Smite, one of the games over at High Res and Skillshot.
My name's Cody. I run a live stream company, Film Quality Services, also DJ and evangelist.
Jonathan Hessing. I work at a content delivery company for live streaming technology, live streaming evangelist. I love live streaming for marketing in every way it can be used.
Well, I suppose one of the biggest things we should talk about is why all the interest in live streaming right now. What is it that is going on that is making live streaming such a hot topic, and you know, in each of your jobs?
If you guys don't mind, I think the first thing is that the market is ripening. It's becoming more and more mature. The technology is getting better as far as the quality, the latency speeds. The market overall is just getting better. The technology is becoming more ubiquitous through different geographical locations as well as across different devices, and people are starting to catch on. There was a statistic that between 12 to 20% of people in this survey didn't think that live streaming was at a state yet in 2016 where you could even charge for it. But we're now getting technologies that are bringing it past that. We're finding new ways to use it, and it's more engaged. And then on the marketing side, it's better for advertisers because you're getting real-time engagement, you're getting real-time data, and for the people, for the brands that are using live streaming, or for anyone who's using live streaming, you're getting better data from that to understand how to use your target markets and where your real engagement is actually coming from. So I think both technologically, the understanding of it, as well as the use cases are both maturing and ripening.
I want to add to that. So I think the cost of entry also has come way down. So it used to be, you know, a lot of the cable companies would have huge, massive studios that you'd have major camera equipment. Now someone who can have a webcam can go and set up a stream, be able to do it within their own home. And then the other thing is that the cost of bandwidth right now is super low. With the introduction of Google Fiber, other bandwidth costs coming down low, it makes it more easier for somebody to do a stream and do it high quality, not just something that's going to be like a 480 pixel live stream.
Yeah, and you're able to hit that same kind of quality, I guess, to add on from any kind of area, right? You can be someone, you know, streaming to 4 people 2 nights a week, or you could be, you know, like our production where there's like 30 plus people, and we're live streaming this thing out to all kinds of people, like thousands of people watching it. It really has, I think, created this atmosphere of you get to be there in the moment. It's not too unlike being in the arena watching with other people, because there is this sort of community around it. So I think that feeling is something that people really enjoy. It's getting better and better, and I think that's probably why it's grown so much, especially lately.
Just as a slight historical reference, I used to stream on Ustream back in the day, and there was no such thing as XSplit or OBS, right. And we had to use TV style mixing tools to try to mix our video to get it out on Ustream. And the tools that are available now for people to make complex presentations with almost TV quality style are remarkably easy. And there are companies out there that will charge you, you know, $15 to create layouts for, you know, what you're doing. But we're kind of going more towards personal live streaming as opposed to away from esports live streaming. But I also think it's interesting, the success levels for traditional media and for live streaming are significantly different. Can you talk a little bit about about engagement with live streaming and things like that?
Yeah, I think that's the area where we have our best shot, right? Where we bring the thing that other things can't do, because it is live, and we try and create that culture around it. Everyone's reacting in the moment. Everyone's hyped about it. So I think that is exactly what our greatest strength is having that live engagement.
I think what it is the next generation of the internet. So if you look at social media, the way social media has evolved, right? We went from firstly you had like Facebook, and it was pictures and sending pictures. Then the next was video, right? And video became the most engaging topic. Now live video is out there, and people want that more raw, real engagement that they can talk to somebody and come back. I mean, at least on the streams that I've done, I found the most engagement. People stay on longer the more you engage actually with your audience. And I think that's with any Twitch stream. If you've seen that, the more they engage, the more those people stay on, the more money that they spend with you, the more tipping that they do. So I think that this is kind of the next generation. Cable television was more of like I'm delivering something and then you're just absorbing it. And live streaming is more of like an engagement of that user. So you're going to see more people go and engage on it because it relates to them more, I guess would be the best way to explain it.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with that. The biggest element of live broadcast on cable is sports and news. And when you think about that being done on cable, it tends to be flawless, especially with how ad insertion works. And now that we have the internet, ad insertion takes buffering. And as you guys may know, every time there's buffering or lossy quality in the content, you have users dropping off and you have viewers dropping off. So now as live comes to a place where it's competitive with the nature of live cable broadcasting, you're going to see the transition over to live streaming. And to more hone in on that, as I was saying, the biggest elements of live broadcasting on cable is sports and news. Well, sports is moving towards live streaming OTT as well, but now we also have a shift in this new sport of esports, where if you look at viewership, the NFL is the only sport that still has consistent higher viewership than esports. I think it goes NFL, esports, MLB, NHL, or MLB, NBA, NHL, something to that capacity. So sports are evolving with this new trend of live streaming as well.
And yet we're not seeing a lot of investment in network television time. It's lagging a little like podcasting and like personal streaming for that matter. What do you think is evolving right now in the market that's getting businesses more interested in investing in esports and esports live streaming?
I think honestly it's the viewage. So like if you look at some of the latest like League of Legends streams, some of these major championship streams that have been going on right now, they're beating NBA, NHL championships. The viewage of them and then the cost to view is way, 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 way low. So you have someone who's 8 years old who's like playing League of Legends, hanging out, and they want to go and watch one of the championships. They can do that when traditionally it's been more like a television thing. So now the amount of views that a company can reach and eyeballs is way more than traditional television is, and then it's just increasing by the day. So you're seeing a lot now some of these companies that have gone with cable television in the past where they've just blasted out to a, let's say it's like an NBC and they want to go and post an ad. Yes, it may go to those people, but now there's way more analytics that some of these live stream companies can push behind so that they can pinpoint and target and figure out what live streams work best for them, where do they want their product to be placed, what the ads actually work, and so it's a better spend of their marketing dollars.
And also to add on to that is the interactive piece. Well, let's bring it back to live broadcasting through cable. It's a one-way communication. Now you can have donations through Twitch. You can have communication through groups, through organizations. There's that element of real-time two-way communication, which increases engagement, which when advertisers, if you look at stats, advertisers are starting to spend more and more money on live video because it gives you the most focused, narrowed statistics and analytics. And so it does that on the back end, but on the front end, it opens a whole new world of interaction for the people viewing the content, which boosts the shelf life of it. It boosts the amount of time viewers stay on something. And it really just adds that increased opportunity for the broadcasters as well. We see people like Ninja collecting $500 million or whatever that number is, right? A month, or it's insane. And so he's doing this, and these are all opportunities because advertisers are finding ways to adapt to these brands in the most real-time way possible with the highest amount of interaction and engagement.
And that's another question. What about demographics? I don't know. Do you guys study the numbers at all? What are we looking at as far as changes in the market, and what's going on with the live streaming audience? What are you seeing that's the most remarkable things there?
On my end, a lot of the events that I stream are music events, so like music festivals, private radio shows. So for what I've seen is that the majority of those people are anywhere between I'd say 18 to 35, somewhere around those range. the demographics, at least income-wise, I haven't really been able to determine as much. But at least for reach, I've seen a lot of national reach, not as much international as I would like, but I know that in gaming, there's way more reach in terms of international stuff because you have all these people playing these games in different countries. I mean, you might be able to give me more stats.
Yeah, no, and you're absolutely thinking about it the right way. By the end of Q3, there's going to be Q3 2019. Esports will have generated over $1 billion in revenue. The highest in terms of revenue, the highest in the game is China. China is leading in terms of revenue through esports live streaming. US follows, and then Europe follows that. So demographically, it's kind of following the trends of live stream overall. You got things like Tencent that's killing it in China. There's just all over the place as live video becomes more of a solid solution to superseding broadcasting cable. You're going to see a lot more revenue coming in from advertisers, and geographically it's matching the states that are the countries that are pioneering that. So right now, demographically, where is the most money coming from in esports live streaming? China, US, Europe.
So let's talk about roles in live streaming, and that was part of the title of this of this thing. We're going to talk about shoutcasting a little bit as well. Where are you seeing? You know, I'm sure some of the people here and some of the people in the audience are interested in being involved in what's going on, and it might seem a little distant. You know, being involved with an esports team, you know, it almost seems like you got to know them to get in. What are you seeing as the ways that people who are interested in getting involved in the industry can find their way into the industry?
What I've found, and especially in our community, it is insular a lot. So a lot of it does come from within it. But I mean, it's just getting involved in it, being passionate about it. I mean, for me, I really was just someone who followed our game all the time, just as like a fan, and I was able to eventually move that into something that I'm able to do full time. And I'm very appreciative for it. But I mean, if it's something they talked about already, we're at this point now where you really can just kind of start on your own working on it, right? Just you can get it set up, and it can look professional if you put the time into it. So I would say try and be involved in the space, start working on it as much as you can, and try and follow your passion, whatever it is that you enjoy doing. Follow that, and I think you can find your way into that space.
I think a lot of it's being original too, to kind of to harp on that piece. I mean, the way I started, I thought live streaming was a really cool idea. I saw some DJ live streaming and I said, I can go and do that. So I went and got a computer and I got a webcam, and then I built onto that, got a couple more webcams, then threw away that equipment, got a mixer, and then I got actual like cameras, and then I got wireless feeds, and then I got drones. So it's just come up with an idea that you like, that is original to you, because the biggest thing that I've seen, at least I'm trying to be a big student of watching other people's streams. I like watching other people spend money and then figuring out how I want to spend my money. There's a big truth behind that, because every dollar counts, but I go and watch other people's streams on what they do well, and then tweak the idea to make it original to you, and then go and follow that. So it's really organic the way live streaming works. And so I'm just at a loss for words at the moment. I guess what I would say is that be original to what you're doing, grow with it, find other people that are passionate the way you are about it. There's communities for literally anything nowadays. There's communities for shoutcasting, there's communities for DJs who love to live stream, there's communities for people who like to cook and live stream. So ultimately, find what you're passionate about, create like it, whether that's just with your budget, whether that's just a webcam or whatnot, and the community will follow you.
So me and one of my close entrepreneur buddies started a podcast called @HustleUp, HSTLUP. And one thing we talked about on one of the most recent episodes was how the internet kind of democratized what you can do and how you can do it. And the reason I preface that is to say this, that build a brand. That is what the internet has allowed you to do, is build a brand. Think about why is esports surpassing all these other sports, the NHL, the NBA, in terms of viewership? It's because there's no borders. It doesn't matter what language. There's no language barriers. There's no international, domestic barriers. You can cast and you can hit the whole world. Use that platform to build a brand. And then when you start building your brand and gaining traction, build a team and monetize it. It's really that simple with the internet. You just got to know, like, you said, you got to be in the system. You got to know how to build a brand, and you can find out, you can do all of that. You can accomplish all that through learning how to build a brand on YouTube and going to networking events to get into the system. It's really about just putting your foot on the ground and taking action to build that brand and utilizing the internet, which is the largest platform and any individual has ever had to build a brand ever.
Building a brand is a very controversial topic, mostly because a lot of people don't feel like brands. A lot of people feel like people, and they want to be people, and they want to do what they want to do. But at the same time, and this comes from years and years of podcasting and creating internet content, the fastest way to get an audience is to focus. What you're doing, get a fine point on what you're trying to present. You can branch out later, don't get me wrong, but there's something to be said for finding a niche audience that is going to consume your content regularly and solidly and build a name for yourself. I actually got my name through Team Fortress 2 and Minecraft, oddly enough. And then when I tried to branch out and do more general things, I was able to. But if you want to look at growth on specialized content versus growth on general content, they are dramatically different curves, and it's almost disturbing. Nothing's worse than watching a Minecraft YouTuber try to pick up a new game, or we're about to see a lot of Fortnite YouTubers picking up new games, and it's a difficult thing, but it's an important lesson to know. What are your takes on this kind of idea that about being a well-rounded kind of general product versus focusing on what you're doing?
From what I've been able to tell, it seems like you're right on to say you kind of got to specialize first. I always tell people when they're trying to start, you got to decide right away, are you really good at something, or are you really funny or interesting? Because you can only be one of those two things, I think. And there's you'll see some people who are really good at CS, and they'll barely talk to you, and the chat's its own thing, and they're just playing the game really well. Or you'll have people who are real bad, and that's part of the show, and we're all there to have some fun. So I guess you figure out which one of those two things you're closest to and lean into that a little bit more. And you are probably going to start off specialized, doing just your thing and trying to build your fans there, but eventually they'll start coming more and more for you if you know which one of those things you are. And you can kind of move into that a little bit and, trick them some. Well, one day just be like, I'm tired of this, do this other thing. And now they're sticking around watching for that. So, maybe try and sneak them into watching something else.
On my end, I started a radio show of interviewing other DJs, because I found that while I think I'm a good DJ, I know there's a whole bunch of other DJs out there who are way better than me, and I'd rather showcase those people and give them a platform in which to speak on, because I know the technical know-how on how all of this stuff works versus just watching myself play, every week. So I started the radio show with that in mind, and I met a whole bunch of people through that process. And so for me, I learned that my niche was not being the person who was the center of attraction, but focusing that spotlight on others. And the more you do that, and I think we can say that for the podcasting world, bringing on guests and having other speakers and whatnot, it grows your circle of people that which grows your ability to have opportunities going forward. It's at least grown my abilities to network with people, and it allowed me to focus on the niche of creating productions that people want to see. So I definitely agree with being a specialist. Focus on your craft and get really, really, really good at it, because when you get really good at it, other people are going to notice, and then they're going to want you for certain things or certain projects. That's how you get on other people's Rolodexes to say, hey, I have this thing I'm going to go do. I want to grab this person and make sure that they're on my team when we want to do something special.
Yeah, I agree with that. I take the position more of an entrepreneur than someone in the esports field, and I guess my answer to that would be run a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and then from there start putting out content based off that analysis and start hitting a niche market and building traction. I learned it early on when I tried to, start off my entrepreneurship journey, trying to build a big live streaming app where I was going to accumulate tons of users and then try and monetize. And through that, we've pivoted and evolved and found a certain niche in the market where we can gain traction. And so once you do that, you can scale it up from there. But the other element of that is I don't believe it's an on or off switch. It's more of a knob. It's not specialization or generalization. It's a knob in between, because I want to, for example, for our podcast, we want to have a solid website with different forms of curated content, and we want to have different channels of curated content where it's not just about content creation, it's about content curation. And so you A/B test those things, and the more things that you have within reason that are low liability that you can A/B test and see where the traction is coming from, you can really kind of find that specialization from generalization and then scale it up from there. So again, I don't see it as an on or off switch. It's more of a knob. Sometimes you need to turn it more towards specialization and focus on niche market, and sometimes you need to generalize it so you can A/B test different things.
Let's talk a little bit about community and how important community plays a role in building any online business. Because I found that in general, as someone involved in live streaming on a individual gamer level, one of the big questions is, how do I grow? How do I grow? And the answer I give more often than anything is, I say, become instrumental in other communities. Find places where you will be valuable to other people, and then when those people look for how, like, even in something silly as being a Twitch streamer, they're gonna host somebody when they're done, And what you can do is, if you're instrumental in their community, when it comes time for them to end their stream, they're going to hand it off to somebody that's instrumental in their community. Talk about how community plays a role in each of the positions you guys have worked in.
Yeah, so I guess I can talk about it in both levels. Like, for me, when I individually stream, your community is everything. They're the people that are there when you're having your off days and when it's not that great a show, and they're the people that are there when you're having your best days. So those are the ones you want to support the most, and not just the people who are watching you, but the other people who stream. We'll all stream together, and those are some of our best days sometimes when maybe we would have been struggling. So it's so important on the individual level. But for us, for our game, we are kind of smaller compared to like League of Legends. So we know that when we're right. And so it is true, and it's part of what we do is that our audience, our community is so focused. There's some groups that are like, they're broad groups, but they don't go that deep when it comes to the product. But for us, it's so deep. Everyone that watches it knows everything so well. They know all of us so well. They follow it all the time. And so we speak to that. We make sure that we understand that we have this community of people who are just as invested as us, legitimately, all the time. So for us, we make sure that's a part of our focus all the time.
I think for community, for what we do is, like, the amount of eyeballs, the amount of attention that you're able to get to something. I think community, having your diehards, is super important. If you're doing something like a podcast, one of my things that I would say is be consistent. I don't care if it's once a week, if it's once a month, if it's whatever, set that date and then always be there at that date. I had a radio show, and I moved it to a studio where I wasn't allowed to be as consistent as I would have liked to. I had it at Mondays at 7, and it would spread to Monday at 9 or Monday at 10, and you lose your audience, because just like a TV show, just like how Friends shows up at Thursday at 7 p.m., people are going to go and sit on the TV and watch it. They're going to watch your live stream, and if you're not consistent, then they're not going to consistently watch. They'll watch you when they find you. But it's really important to be as persistent as possible, and then you'll grow your community, because then they'll start to come with you. They'll be there every week. They'll know to tune in at that time. The other thing that I'd say about community is be sure to engage them. So I found, at least in the live streams that I've done, if I'm just DJing by myself, or if I'm not going and talking to those people who are actually in the chats, you just watch your users just drop off drastically. The more you communicate with them, the more they tend to stay on. It goes back to the interactive engagement. What's the perk of having a live stream is the fact that you can engage and have that one-on-one with the people who are watching you. So I think that's really important as well. And then the final thing I have on community is make sure that you have an original idea. The more original it is, and the more raw you it is, the more people tend to watch. So and the more viral that thing will become. I don't care if it's like, you want to go game in a forest somewhere, and you somehow find to bring your console out. And I'm being serious, but like if you figure that out, and you're the one who does that, and you pioneer that, you'll be the person that people want to watch because it's something different that people haven't done that people want to watch. So I think it's a kind of a three-pronged thing. How do you grow your community? How do you keep your community around? And then how do you thrive in that community?
No, that's absolutely right. And there's a digital marketer named Gary Vaynerchuk, or Gary V, who's a thought leader. I'm sure everyone's heard of him. He's a little out there with his thoughts, but he's got some very direct kind of things that he said, some very good gems. One of them is his book, Hook, Jab, which is add value, ask for value. When you're building a community, you don't want to be asking for value. You see a lot of, I'm going to take artists, musicians to be the example. When they're putting out projects, a lot of younger people, they say, download my mixtape, listen to my song. You're asking. If you want to build a very engaged community, you need to add value as much as possible. Always be adding value to your community. Always be engaging with them. Think about what Apple did in their early days. They never put pricing on any of their commercials. It was always just about how you could think different and how you could be inspired. And that's the approach you need to take. Is you don't want to be the hero of someone's story. You want to help them be the hero of their own story. And that's just a principle of marketing. And when you do that and you add value consistently in whatever community you're engaged with, you see tremendous results in time engaged with, the amount they're engaged with. That's how you go from having, I'll tie it back to music, is your musicians' money doesn't come from their streams that people are discovering them on streaming platforms, Apple Music and Spotify. It's coming from conversions from their super fans. And what you want to do is you want to take your discovery fans and turn them into super fans. And the way you do that is by adding value, add that value.
And that's, talking about marketing. That's sort of an interesting take on things. And I lost my train of thought. I'm right there with you. Don't feel bad. But I've noticed that, when you're trying to engage communities and build value with them, you have to kind of you're actually doing something where you're doing more than providing a product. Marketing has evolved over the years. You're not trying to create it's not like the old days where you put your talcum powder on a page and said, buy my talcum powder. Nowadays, you're trying to create almost an imitable lifestyle. You want to create a world that someone else wants to be a part of. And I find with live streaming, in a lot of ways, that your viewers either want to be you, hang out with you, or get something from you, and that's kind of awesome and also difficult as a 50-year-old man. Not a lot of people are like, hey, I want to hang out with that 50-year-old dude. They got to get to know me first to realize how much fun that will be. But like, what kind of aspects in the things that you do you recognize are building lifestyle almost because to kind of go back to that thought process, people latch on to what they kind of, it's more of an ethos. It's like the Arby's ads or the Wendy's Twitter account, right? You're building something that people want to identify with. Like, yes, I think that is cool. I want to be part of it. Who would have thought that Wendy's Twitter would be a thing, 5 years ago? So let's talk a little bit. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about how you're shaping your product or what you're doing, your presentation in a way that's making it into more of a lifestyle than anything else.
So I'm actually really glad you used that Wendy's example because him and I actually are starting something together called VidUs, and it's live streams of large scale marketing events. So we go to brands and we figure out a big event that we can live stream to get that real time impression. I lost my train of thought now. What was the question?
I was talking about steps you've taken to create lifestyle in the stuff that you're marketing so that people want to identify and lock onto it.
Yeah, let me come back to that because I had a good answer. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry, I remember. So So the Wendy's thing, and I actually the reason I like to use that is because I was talking about that in our business plan, and it's how they created this element of sarcastically retorting to people that comment negatively, and how that's generated well amongst the youth and the millennials of this country, and internationally as well. It's resonate. It's something that resonates. That sarcasm is funny and it resonates. And so I'm gonna tie it back to Gary Vee because he's such a smart thought leader in this capacity. And that's, you don't study what the influencers are doing. You study the comments on what the influencers are doing. You want to know what is the communities of these influencers, what is their perspective, and that gives you better data to figure out how you should shape your brand to hit them. And then the other thing comes back to what Cody was saying, which is being authentic, documenting content, not creating content. People like back to what you were saying is people want to follow who you are. There's only a few reasons people want to use this content to take themselves out of their own reality, and you got to give them the most authentic way that'll resonate with that. But also, it comes down to knowledge of that market and what is the best way to get your message to resonate on a macro level.
On my end for DJing, I've actually done a lot of research on that because I found that that users engage on music streams more in certain aspects than others. The best examples I can give is people who really like music. You've probably watched a Boiler Room set, or you've probably watched a Be at TV set. And back in 2016, at the time that they started doing this, it was huge because no one's ever gone and streamed a DJ in a club before, and people want to go in the clubs. They want to be by the DJ. They want to see the sounds. They want to go and see them playing on the mixers because an audience member wouldn't be able to see that. That was 3 years ago, and now that's almost considered old hat. So people don't want to watch a DJ in a club anymore. And so if you look at Beat TV or Boiler Room, their stats are dying. So they used to get millions of views every one. They maybe get a couple 100,000. And one that I've been really watching right now I've been studying a lot is Circle. Circle took that idea and said, okay, well, that's cool, have a DJ in a club. But how about we have like Carl Cox at Stonehenge? How about we have Nina Kravitz at like the Eiffel Tower? How about we have like, someone at the 007 Evil Lair up in Switzerland and throw a party there? And that's what people want to identify to. They're like, holy crap, wow, man, they're going and they're partying at like the 007 Tower in the middle of Switzerland. I want to be a part of that.
Pablo Escobar's island?
Yeah, that's exactly. And that's like people want to see, and you see more and more video now focused on like the virality of these jaw-dropping moments, and at least on my end of what I'm seeing live streaming and what I'm like gearing up for is the next generation of DJing and live streaming, what that looks like. And ultimately, people want that jaw-dropping, wow, I want to be there moment. Like I've never been there, and I want to be a part of that. And so it's pushed production companies and DJs to get way more creative about what they're presenting to the user and how they want to engage the user. So at least on my end, I'm taking Circulate's example, where like this year alone they went from like 20,000 followers to over 800,000 in less than a year. I'm taking that model and saying, all right, well, obviously they're being successful at it. Now it's my turn. How do I want to take those ideas? Look at other people who are working in this space. Like it goes back to what I was talking about earlier. Who look at those people who are working in the space and what they're doing and which ones are successful and which ones are not. Take some of those ideas that of the ones that are successful. Don't just copy it, but mold it into what's authentic to you to create something truly original. And that's how you're going to grab those large communities. That's how you're going to grab those eyeballs of people who are like, I want to be like you. I want to be where you're at.
I want to go back to something you said earlier. Drones? Drones. So, like, a lot of live streaming right now used to be like a one camera deal. Even some of the major broadcasting companies, like the TV companies, some of them use drones. They used to have, like, if you watch like a football game, they had like the blimp cam, right? And those cameras are really cool. But I've seen that a lot of the really good engaging streams right now, especially like I'll go talk about Circle again. Circle uses drones in their shots to give that far off pan, and that's not normally seen
in normal streams. I know we're kind of veering away from esports when I talk about this. Having a drone in a conference center doesn't really work, but you'll see it in the form of like a crane cam. So like, for instance, at DreamHack, I don't know if you guys have been to DreamHack, but they had the huge crane cams that captured the audience and brought it back. People want to see the whole room. They want to see views that they couldn't normally see on the ground. And that is easily captured with drones. And now that drones are becoming more prevalent, and the fact that you can get a solid 4K drone and be able to add it into a live stream and it looks high quality is super important right now. Something that I'm trying to go and figure out how to do is add the FPV drones. So those drones that you see in like drone racing and whatnot, I think those would be really cool to add for cinematic shots to get really up close and personal with some like landscapes that you're doing. The big problem there is that those drones don't have a solid transmission signal that you can go and send into 1080p. And I talk about this too. The higher the quality your stream is, the more people tend to watch. That's why people watch shows on television. That's why people go and watch things on Netflix, because it's in 4K and 1080p. Same thing I talk about with drones. So if you're going to go and add a drone, make sure it's the right time and make sure that you're doing it correctly and that it's high quality.
One thing onto that. No, because that's a really good point. I just got one thing to add on that, which is as live stream becomes a more ubiquitous technology, that's not just in terms of the viewing devices, that's in terms of the streaming devices as well, with drones being that. And I personally believe where we are with live streaming and the capacity that the viewing and the streaming devices have in comparison to the NFL, we're still in leather football helmets. So that's how far back we are and how much evolution there is still left with this new technology, in both in terms of how you view it and how you capture it.
And I mean, that's, sorry, but it's very true what he's saying. There's a lot of consolidation of equipment in the industry right now. You know, if you look back even 5 years ago, in order to live stream, you had to have a computer, you got to have a switcher, you got to have a camera, you got to have an encoder, something that goes and encodes that stream to be able to send it out. Like, there was a whole bunch of equipment. There's now pieces of equipment out there right now that you don't need half of that stuff anymore. It's just one piece of equipment that you can have a camera. And I think the further we go down the line, I look at 2019, 2020, 2021, you're going to see a lot of these consolidations of equipment that, like, even one piece of equipment that I have right now, it's my whole studio in the form of a tablet. So I don't need to have any of that fancier stuff. And when that happens, I think that it's going to bring the cost of entry even lower, and you're going to see way more professional streams out there right now. Like, I think there's a big gap in between, you know, someone out there hanging out with a webcam and then like what's about to happen out there with multiple cameras going on and setups. I think you're going to see way more of these setups going forward, that like anybody is going to be able to run a professional stream. It's going to be, instead of, you know, 2,000 television channels, there's going to be 8 million streams that you can go and watch. I mean, there's already is now, but it's going to be 8 million professional streams that you can watch, that you can have a community on literally like anything, you know.
Let me have one more thing. No, because this is like right up my alley. So this stuff gets me pumped up. And another big thing that we're going to see as this technology gets better, again, the streaming devices and the viewing devices, is its capacity to have lower latencies on data and analytics in real time. Where, you know, there's a league right now where their stats are 5 seconds behind their content. As well as overlaying things with AR and adding VR into the mix. As live becomes more ubiquitous, you're going to see advertisers and the viewing experience change tremendously with being able to use AR more than just face filters like on Snapchat right now.
I'm sorry I provided so many good things for you guys to talk about. I've got one more thing to say. Good. That's why we're here. When you talked about your drones, I just imagined doing an establishing shot over a crowd and then the drone coming right into the face of the DJ and him going, "Geez, get out." So let's kind of shift the focus a little bit. We're at an esports event. Let's shift back a little bit more towards esports. Let's talk about shoutcasting and the kinds of things that are involved there. A lot of people think that this is something that just sort of happens, that there are people who can just do it. And in certain ways, I'm not going to argue, there is a talent for it, but it's also a skill that you can really develop. What are some of the things that you have found that really work for people, and what are some of kind of the downfalls with getting involved in it?
Sure. I don't know. That's a lot of that's a lot. What I would say is that as far as like downfalls, is that a lot of people like to come in and they like to use it as their opportunity to show how much they know. And that's not what anyone wants from you, I don't think. It's like they would like you to know it, and when it's appropriate, let that come out. But really, you're translating. That's what you're doing. Is that there's all these people with different levels of connectivity to the game, and your job is to translate for everyone at that level. Like if I'm watching in the living room and it's my living room, so my mom happens to be there, she doesn't know what's going on, so I'm speaking to her, but I'm also speaking to the guy that watches every single week, and I'm talking to him too. And the idea is to try and make sure that all this cool stuff that I know that's happening and all this work that the players are putting into it, all that stuff gets translated to the people who's watching, whatever it is that their level of understanding is. If they're in Spanish 101 or if they've been speaking Spanish natively for 30 years, then I've got to try and find a way to translate it to that language for them. And it's really not about you. In an ideal scenario, I would melt away, right? And it would just be the people watching and this cool thing that they love, and whatever the barrier is for them in between it, I'm trying to break that down as much as possible so they can just, understand what's happening to the best extent.
I mean, I don't have really much shoutcasting experience other than like my hosting for Spin and Chill. On my end, it's being approachable. And then I never really liked being on camera personally. It wasn't like what I wanted to do. But while I started to do these live streams, I found that I had to be on camera. So the more I was on camera, the better I got at it. So if you're wanting to be a shoutcaster, if you're wanting to be an announcer, even if you hate being on camera, just put yourself on camera as much as possible. I don't care if it's just live streaming in like your living room and just going and like working through it and talking to yourself. And you may have like one or two people who come in and commentate, but as long as you just go through that experience, you'll get better as it. Like I was not good at all. When I look at some of my first streams that I ever did, I was horrible. It was bad. But the more I got comfortable on camera, the more of my personality came out on camera, and then the more people wanted to engage on the live streams because more of my personality would come out. So if there's people out there who are wanting to really get into hosting or being on camera, stuff like that, just start. Just go and get in front of the camera. Just practice with yourself. Just practice just doing that, and you'll get better over time. I don't think anyone just all of a sudden just comes out of the gate and they're just ready to rock and roll and gonna be an announcer. But that's my tip.
No, I think it's the same principles as anything that requires you to be the host or something to that capacity, which is be authentic and be engaging. And that's really all it is. And a more practical way of thinking about that and how I think about it when I'm on camera is you take communication, and I think it's called the rule of 7%. 55% of your communication is in your body language, 38% is in your vocal projection, and only 7% is what you're actually saying. And if you can get a high percentage when you add up all of those, that's the engaging piece. And the authentic piece is just knowing who you are and how that'll resonate with your target market. So it's just the same principles as everything else in terms of being a host.
And that's, I mean, and it's practice. If you want to become a shoutcaster, find a match, practice talking about it, figure out, and then look at the video of yourself doing it. Pay attention to what you would be interested in. Do what you would be interested in. And I think that's for any entertainment medium. I mean, if you're not going to be interested in your own content, who else will be? So you want to try to make sure that you're focusing on the things that you would want to hear. And just as an example, I think I've demonstrated I'm a pretty good public speaker and I know how to engage an audience and everything like that. But this past weekend at PAX South, I had a shoutcasting role in the Mixer booth Hype Zone Live, where I basically had to shoutcast some Fortnite. And a lot of that involved talking while a guy spent a minute walking across the field, not engaging anyone. And it's those kinds of moments that really test your mettle. Are you going to let that, kind of dissuade you? Are you going to be frustrated by that? You got to get used to these moments where you're not going to have the content handed to you. And that comes from practice. That comes from understanding. And it's the same thing with like podcasting or doing any kind of broadcast content. When I go to live stream with other people currently, I look for other people who have produced professional content to live stream with because they know how to let go of the mic. They know how to hand it back. They know how to detect when you're ready to say something. And that kind of handshake back and forth between professional broadcasters is a lot of what shoutcasting is also, because you usually have somebody by your side. And they've got an angle they're going to take, and you've got an angle you're going to take, and you're hoping that that interaction will provide some entertainment. What kind of stuff do you tend to focus on? Like what kind of aspect of shoutcasting do you tend to really enjoy when you get involved?
So I'm the chair one is what we call it. So when I cast, I'm mostly doing like play-by-play. Like I talk about what's literally happening in the game, and I'll get loud when things are exciting, and then I'll let my partner, who are the ones who used to be pros or who like look at the spreadsheets, and they know all that stuff. When it's time to like break down why something worked or why it happened, I make sure that we get them more engaged, and they'll talk about all the smart stuff, and I'll just get excited when stuff's happening. But I mean, it really is. It's not too far from what you would see in anything else, like in sports or like. Why do people love Tony Romo now? All of us now that he's commentating, it's because he is authentic and he's really good at it, right? He knows it's going to be happening. He speaks to his experience when he was playing. Tony Romo gets geeked up because he's like, oh, well, that guy's not covered properly, and this is about to be a touchdown pass, and then it literally is 6 seconds later, and that experience is what makes him so great. And so you try and do that same thing. You're the person who knows the most about it. So when you see what's happening, you let them know. You tell them this is when the exciting thing's coming and it's happening, or you react to it, and then that pulls them in. Like a lot of the time, especially nowadays, people aren't even watching you all the time, 100% of the time. They're like, your game is up that they're watching, and then they're playing Hearthstone or something, or doing homework on the other monitor, and you almost pull them back in when the interesting part's happening. Like during that part when that person's running and they're not fighting anyone, you're almost letting them know that with your voice, and then as soon as someone's on the horizon, you start to build, and then they're like, okay, I'll pull back in because now's the time to watch. So a lot of that is part of your job.
I lost my train of thought. I had a really good question. God, mornings.
No, that's spot on, and I think it comes back to high energy in both your tone and your animated body language. I when I watch casters, or when I watch people on YouTube, whatever form of content, I don't want to look at the person or listen to the person talking like this. I want to watch the person who's talking like this and being animated with both their tone and their body language. It's more engaging. It's more exciting. It helps the information resonate more. It's a more memorable experience. I just wanted to add that on as well.
I'll kind of complement that as well. I feel that the camera kind of sucks. When you see yourself on camera, the camera takes away energy from you, so you kind of have to be over energetic. So if you're normally someone's a very passionate person, that has to come out a little bit more for it to be captured by camera or captured through live stream. That's at least some of the tidbit that I've found. So if you're going to be shoutcasting or whatnot, try and raise your energy level just a little bit higher than what you normally would be, because then that's going to actually be deemed normal on through the lens of camera.
It's the same thing with photographs and stuff like that. If you want to take a really good photograph, lean into it, And I think it's that way in any kind of broadcast medium. You want to make sure that you're stepping into it and getting into the space. Something interesting that I always get amused by is people tend to think that video games can be silly or non-engaging compared to actual sports. And yet when you're watching a football game, there is one ball. There is one place to pay attention. When you're watching a Smite match, there are way more than one ball in play. How do you kind of get your brain around the fact that you have 3 or 4 different angles that you have to take on every single match that's going on?
That's really funny that you say it like that, because that was the first piece of advice I got when I was hired on, was that we don't have a traditional ball to follow. And so our job is we kind of create it. So we're looking at all this information, and it's our job all the time to try and decide what the most important thing is. There are some moments where it's more obvious, and it's like, that's where you should be focusing, and we'll hone in on it. But sometimes it's not any action at all. Sometimes it's that, we have the webcam of the player and they're turned away, and so maybe something's happening that they're communicating about, or something that they're doing that's not normal that you see in this situation. So we kind of have to, like I said, translate, where the ball is sometimes. And that really is one of the main things that we do, in all honesty. Yeah, sure.
One piece that I've seen, at least on the production side of it, because you guys are more in the front end, and then we're having to go and be the cameras in the back end or watching the games. That's something that's kind of stumped us as camera guys, as followers, because now when you have something like football, where the focus is going to be. It's obviously going to be on the football. when you're looking at something like Fortnite, you might have eight like star players, and they could be all over that map. And so you're having to figure out strategically, kind of on point, where is the focus of attention? What does the viewer really want to watch? Are they going to watch? They're going to watch someone running across the field. They're going to watch that firefight. And so it's been really important on the production side to have people who are watchers, who are trained people in those games. Like Fortnite, I've been doing a lot of research on Fortnite right now to do more live streaming at that. I basically got a couple of my friends and I said, we're going to walk through like the whole map. I want to know where everything is. Where do people normally start fighting at? Where is the, who are like star players? Yeah, but like, but all of that, those tiny things help to create like a star production, because if you're not capturing those main points, you're going to lose viewers, you're going to lose their interest, and you're going to miss the pivotal points. So there's a whole bunch of now research that you have to do ahead of time to know where those action moments are going to be. When you have something like a football or hockey, as long as you just follow the puck or you follow the football or the baseball, like you're going to get the action. Like the action's going to happen there. But in something like if you're looking at like a League of Legends or like a Fortnite, it's way more complicated. So it's more important to do your research, understand the game, understand the players that are going in and their strategies, so that when you're talking about these things or whether you're trying to capture these things on screen, that you know where that action's going to be so that the viewers can watch it.
I'm interested to see how the future of esports goes from, or how VOD, video on demand, evolves with esports live. And this is an element right here that I believe it'll increase the shelf life of the content. For example, you've got an NFL game right now. You can only watch that one way because there's only one ball. But if you go back and you watch Fortnite, you can watch all the different things that are taking place. You could spend one day watching it one way and then a week go back and watch it a whole different way. And it's like it's multiple experiences in one experience, whereas the NFL is just that one time, one experience with one ball.
And if I could add one more thing, I would say to that point, when you're casting, you do this weird thing where you're talking almost 2 seconds in the past about what has happened, but then you're always trying to think like 2 seconds in the future about what could be happening next, or what could be happening in the next moment. And you're constantly doing this check with yourself, like, okay, well, let's talk about what happened, why that happened, what happened. All right, we got to stop because in 2 seconds, we're about to have this next big thing. So you're kind of living in those two moments. That way, you can always tell them, where the ball is, so to speak. Yeah.
And really, the voice of a shoutcaster creates the ball. You're creating a narrative about what's going on. You have to kind of tell the story of what's happening with the players that are on the field. They're not going to tell you except through their actions, and you have to be able to interpret that and tell a story around it. I have one question, then we need to wind up. Have you ever gotten it wrong?
Oh yeah, yeah. You definitely will, and I think that you can't be afraid to take your shot. As Michael Scott once quoted Wayne Gretzky, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So you definitely got to call them, and that's part of. Audiences can tell when you're playing safe. They can tell when you're not willing to go out there and take those risks, and that's when you're least valuable to them. So you need to be able to try and call stuff that's going to happen, or maybe say some stuff that's a little different and not normal. And you will make some mistakes. That's why there's two of you usually, and the other person will come in and they'll have your back, and they'll never leave you out there entirely alone looking silly. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. I make them all the time. We just move on. We laugh at them, and we keep on going, and have enough confidence in yourself and that you know what you're talking about, to where even if you venture out a couple times and make an error, that you can always pull it back.
I've botched so many live streams. I have no idea. So many live streams. But a lot of that stuff it's kind of like, the best way I can explain it is a DJ. When you're sitting there and you're up and close with the content and you're going and you're running a set, and then someone comes up to you afterwards, oh, yeah, that's a great set. And you're like, yeah, but I messed up the transition between this song, and I did this and that. Majority of people aren't going to go and see those things. So like even in the productions, if everything is going wrong, which I've had like everything going absolutely wrong in the background, as long as you keep your cool and you make it look like it's just a part of the show, most people are going to capture it. There might be like one person who's like, haha, but most of those people are going to be like either fellow shoutcasters or production guys and be like, I saw what you did there and it's going to be more of like your friends. But most people aren't going to really capture it. So if you mess up on screen, just like keep rolling with it, keep rock and rolling, and everything will be fine.
Yeah, and I think, again, I like to use the analogy of a knob instead of an on and off switch. And I think the knob is, oh man, I lost my train of thought. It's early in the morning on a Saturday. I mean, yeah, go ahead and take it.
That's all right. I usually try to compare it to theater. Like when you're doing live theater, I don't know if anybody's done any acting. They're not going to know if you don't get a line right. If you're with professional actors and you get your line wrong, they're going to cover for you. They're going to help shape the experience.
No one has Macbeth memorized.
Yeah, exactly. But like the other thing is that it comes out in the wash. A lot of times you'll come up to like the deadline, like, okay, we're done practicing. Now we got to go and do the thing. And if you've worked hard and you try to put it on, once you get on stage, it generally will work out. And that goes with pretty much everything.
All right, so what I was trying to say is there's a knob between fail fast, fail often, and analysis by paralysis, or paralysis by analysis. And you've got to find what works in there and be willing to go outside your comfort zone. And, you don't want to, without calculation, fail fast, fail often, but you also don't want to get stuck and get paralysis by analysis. So you've got to do things. You've got to be willing to mess up. But the important part is, well, first off, the important part is psychologically, people are remembered by their wins, not their losses. And then the other thing is take time to reflect on your losses. Don't just laugh and shrug it off or get upset and kick it and take it as a loss. Use it as a learning experience. Learn from it, reflect on it, figure out what you did right, what you did wrong, and keep it moving.
Well, I'd like to thank all the panelists that we had here. Please give them a hand. This has been really, really enlightening. We are at the Georgia State University Esports Finals. We have some other events coming up. Additionally, in just a moment, we're going to be doing a Know Your Rig panel on how to make sure you have the right esports rig. Thanks for watching. I'm Wes Wilson, and we'll see you soon.